Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. The Kelly Green Hour has returned after a little bit of a hiatus. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co host, Connor Donald. Connor, it's been a while, but Eagles football is back, the NFL is back. So, guess what that means? The Kelly Green Hour is back. I am pumped for this upcoming season. Coming off of a Super Bowl appearance for the Eagles and losing the way they lost, which still I'm not over, but this team is deep. This team has a lot of talent. And even though the schedule is ridiculous, which we're not going to get into the schedule today, but definitely before the regular season we will, even though it's tough, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be a team to be reckoned with in the NFC this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been so long since we talked. We didn't get to do anything for the draft. We haven't done anything leading up because I had baby number two who kind of took over my basement during sleep training. And so it has been a while and there's been so much happen. And I think there's still more to come because we know how he loves to roll the dice, especially this late. We saw the Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham moves come out of nowhere. They showed up for a workout, then they were signed. And then we had the Kelly Green jersey launch, which our show is just named after. There's
Those
just been
jerseys, by
so
the way,
much.
not to cut you off, I was at the open practice and seeing the jerseys in person, they're freaking beautiful, man. They are awesome. I cannot wait. I'm mad they're only wearing them twice this year, but I'm hoping that these become, more of a stable like for them down the road. Like maybe next year they'll wear them half home games or something, or they'll go to full time. But these Kelly Green jerseys are freaking beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they look beautiful in the pictures, and the biggest thing to me is what other fan base is lining up at 3 a.m. and tailgating the launch of a jersey. That was what got
many,
me
if
when I
any.
saw those videos. I was like, oh my goodness, this fan base is just the best fan base. If
Yeah,
you're
so
not with us, you're against us and you hate us. But if you're with us, it's the best fan base to be a part of.
yep. So we know the Philadelphia Eagles open their preseason against the Baltimore Ravens tomorrow or Saturday evening, where the Ravens have won 23 consecutive preseason games. But before we get started, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJ Harrell54, and follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at EOP Sports or Edge of Philly Sports, and that's where you can catch all of the great shows for Edge of Philly Sports and the Kelly Green Hour. Mr. Crockpot Media, welcome back, gents. How does LJ feel about the upcoming? I hope they go 0-82. They're not getting out. Whatever happens, they're not getting past the second round though, because they're a bunch of frauds, especially the fraud MVP and the fraud general manager. Just saying. But we're not here to talk about losers. We're here to talk about a team that actually, makes it to a championship game.
Oh, that's funny. That's priceless. He's always got to take a jab at your
Wanted to
hate.
get my reaction. Trying to get it up. Trying to get my my heartbeat going. But so Connor, as you mentioned, it's been a while since we've been together. We didn't get to go through the draft. We didn't get to go through free agency. But the Philly Dogs, man, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Kaylee Ringo joining Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis, Howie Roseman. I don't know how they got Carter at 9. Carter could potentially be the best player. Could be the best player in the entire draft. And getting a guy like Nolan Smith at number 30, which if people were looking at mock drafts, and obviously mock drafts aren't the end all be all of things, he was projected to potentially go in the top 10, top 15, and they got him at 30. And he's getting nothing but rave reviews at camp. They've been calling him a mini Hassan Reddick. Got a bunch of speed, hasn't played since October of last year because he had an injury. And he talked about how he just cannot wait to strap it up, get on the field, and hit somebody tomorrow in Baltimore. What are your thoughts on the Philly Dogs that the Eagles have brought in?
Well, and you forgot to mention Keely Ringo was actually at the beginning of the college football season projected to go in the first round as well. Mm-hmm. And I get the fall. He had some rough games in games that really mattered. But at the end of the day, that something was there enough that I don't think he should have fallen to where he fell to with the Philadelphia Eagles or the Philadelphia Dogs. But I think, after all those years, we picked on him for why you always passing on the Georgia defensive players, why you always passing on the Alabama offensive players. And he has gone to, well, with Alabama, I mean, Devontae Smith is the biggest one, but he has gone to the complete opposite side of the spectrum defensively, getting all these dogs. But I mean, they are the number one defense year in and year out at college football for a reason. And like you said, to get Nolan Smith where we got him is crazy. I get it, undersized, whatever. Same thing as Nakobe Dean, undersized, whatever. Can they put up with, is the durability going to be there and stuff? I get the question marks, but whatever. The skill, the underlying skill, if you have a guy like Sean Desai who's really smart, scheming things up for you, there's a way to work around those things. And Jalen Carter, like you said, he's been blowing things up in camp and looking really good for not being able to really put his hands on the person he's about to hit. He's been doing some crazy things from what everyone's reporting. And then Jordan Davis apparently is in much better shape. Apparently he focused primarily on his conditioning through the offseason, and he's looking a lot better. So you got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis who are going to take up the center as soon as all these older guys move out. They're probably going to start taking over the center of that defensive line this season. And then on the outside, you got Hassan Reddick, who you got for another couple of years. You got Jordan, or you got Smith. You got some really good guys on the outside. I mean, we still have Josh Sweat. We'll see if last year was just the fact that defensive line was insane, that Josh Sweat had so much success, and with the younger players in place, is he going to be able to be equally effective? We're going to wait and see things out. But I mean, I still think this defense is going to be really, really good.
Well, I think the biggest thing when it comes to the defense, and I don't mean to cut you off, is compared to last year, look, the defensive numbers were good last year because the best quarterback the Eagles faced was Kirk Cousins until the Super Bowl. Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott. Like,
agreed.
Looking at the schedule this year, you're going to get Mahomes, you're going to get, Allen, Tua. The schedule this year is no joke. It's obviously the toughest schedule in the league for a reason, and it's not going to be easy. So while we expect the expectation, and obviously we're not going to get predictions today, but the expectation is for the Eagles to have a very, very, very good season. The numbers might not look as good as they did last year. Look, they went 14-3 last year. They could go 11-6, 12-5 this year, still be just as good, if not better, but they won't have as many wins. The defense won't have 70 sacks. They won't hold opponents to 17 points a game or whatever it was last year. It's gonna, and that's not going to be an indictment on Sean Desai. It's just going to be an indictment on they're playing a lot better teams. Will they hold certain opponents down? Yes, but there's going to be opponents that just put points on the board because that's who they are. When you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, when you're going up against Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen with the Bills, like when you're going up against Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, that defense or that offense in Miami, it's just you're gonna naturally give up points, but it doesn't mean that the Eagles are gonna be worse than they were last year.
Yeah, and I mean, we never got to react to the schedule, and obviously we'll do later on, right before the season starts. We'll make our predictions for what we think the record's going to be for Philadelphia. But when you go from the NFC least to the NFC beast in a year, there's a reason that happened, and it's not just because all the teams were really good. It's because it was the easy schedule in the NFL, and then it's just how the NFL works and the schedule makers work. The next year, it flips. If you're the best division in football, you're gonna get the hardest schedule the next season, and that's what's happening here. And like you said, it is definitely not an indictment on Sean Desai or anybody within this defense if you're giving up 24, 25 points per game. It's just a sign that you're playing way better offenses, high-octane offenses, and the schedule is going to be harder. There's people out there who are predicting 14-3 and 15-2. I'm not going to be one of those guys. I can already tell you right now, I'm not going to be one of those guys. And that is not saying we can't win the NFC East. That's not saying we can't get to the playoffs, and that's not saying we can't get back to the Super Bowl. That's just saying that it's a long regular season, and there's going to be some really hard games, and there's going to be some bumps in the road. We got some older vets. You got Darius St. James Bradbury on the outside. They're going to be tested this year, way more than they were tested last year. Can they put up with that for an entire season? We got an almost entirely new linebacking core. what's that going to look like? The
It is
safety
an entirely
position,
new
again,
linebacker
major
core.
question mark. You mentioned it. I posted on the Kelly Green Hour Twitter. Reed Blankenship's a lock for that safety one position, but it was the same as Marcus Epps. Marcus Epps got locked in last season. He looked good, but he was not what I would say would be like, top 20 safety in the league. He was a really good safety for us, but he had his moments. These guys are heat-seeking missiles. What are they going to be like if it's not about tackling a guy or hitting the guy in front of you? That's the big thing. Good for Reed Blankenship. It's an incredible story. Dude went from a UDFA to the starting safety in this defense. He earned a lot of respect of fans and the Philadelphia Eagles. So good on him. But that doesn't mean I'm not questioning the safety position still.
Oh, I'm definitely questioning it. I mean, the big name that I thought the Eagles were potentially going to go after would be Budda Baker before he restructured his deal with the Cardinals. And we always talk about how Howie's going to make a move before the season starts. Last year was C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and not being able to bring him back is kind of I think that's going to be a bigger deal than people are making it out to be. And I know that Gardner-Johnson has said some things about Philly and whatnot, but I think his agent read his market wrong. And if there was a report that the Eagles had offered him a multi-year deal and thought he was going to get more and didn't, I hope that doesn't come back to bite somebody like Gardner-Johnson. Like he was a really good player for the Eagles. Missed 5 games, but still led the league, tied for the league in interceptions. So he will be missed. His playmaking ability will be missed. I am worried about the middle, the linebackers and the safeties on the defense.
I do think, like, when we talk about the safety position, I think the only one who deservingly should sit in the preseason is Blankenship. And I think that
I think they all need to play. I think especially with it being a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. But I think if there's going to be a guy that they're going to rest more than the rest, it's going to be Reed Blankenship because they seem set on him and they seem comfortable with him. But there's no reason Terrell Edmonds or any of those guys are not out there playing every single game and playing at least full halves, because you need to figure out what do you have in the safety position and do you need to go out there and make that last minute move that we're thinking how we might make. Because if there's a position I'm looking at, that is a position I'm looking at, and I'm saying, there's got to be one more move, Howie, and that is where I'm looking. We have a plethora of cornerbacks, so there could be the idea that they move someone to safety from the cornerbacks. But at that same point, are you in a better position by moving someone who's played cornerback all their career to safety? It's a depth move, not a start and safety move, and you still have a start and safety job that I think is fully open for the taking.
Yeah, well, definitely is. I thought, besides Budda Baker, the other name, Patrick Queen, the Eagles are going to see the Ravens tomorrow. I thought Patrick Queen could potentially be a move, but with bringing in Miles Jack, and I'm not saying Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham are up to Patrick Queen's ability, but, they got Nakobe Dean, who I think is set in as one of the starters as long as he can stay healthy. Then it becomes, is it going to be Morrow? Is it going to be Ellis? Is it going to be Jack, who Jack has been getting a bunch of first team reps? Is it, Cunningham is probably going to make Bradley? I don't think is going to be like a starter, but he's a special team steward for the Eagles. So, they have at the linebacker position, they have quantity over quality. But when you talk about the corners, they have a lot of quality. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot big numbers, but it's a lot of quality players. Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, Ringo, who they're high on, Ricks, who I love as an undrafted free agent, Gardner, who I love as an undrafted free agent. They have Job. They have good. There are so many guys that can play. Job is probably I think Job is on the team. Now he's going to get a lot of playing time in preseason, but I think Job has solidified a spot, as a guy that can be a backup corner on the outside. He's been playing really well in camp. So looking at the defense, the secondary, I don't have issues with the cornerback position. It's going to be a tough call when we get to cut down day, because you're going to release a guy who you potentially are going to want to bring back to the practice squad, and he's going to get snatched up by a team looking for a corner because you have such good quality guys at that position.
Yeah, I agree. I think come cut down day, it's going to be really difficult. I mean, you look at the running backs, I see no way they keep more than 4. You look at wide receiver, I see no way they keep more than 5. And the only reason I say 5 is because you probably, based on everything we've heard from camp, and I know you hate this, LJ, but it sounds like Britton Covey's coming back as a punt returner. It sounds like they like him there. And it also sounds like he's made strides as a receiver.
I think you can cut him. Nobody's going to pick him up, sign him to the practice squad, and the first couple of weeks bring him up, and then eventually make a decision on.
You could
That's
potentially do what they did last year, but then you're still sitting there saying, why'd you sign him after he got past that cutoff point and he only gave you 1 or 2 okay games as a punt return?
I mean, I'm not a Covey guy, so
no, like that's another position I'm interested to see, because like I don't think Boston Scott should be on the team, but if he shows any value in special teams, he could make it. Same with Britton Covey. Like there's other guy, like they had guys returning punts who, like Kenneth Gainwell probably shouldn't be returning kicks or punts, but they kind of tested him out there. That's another position I'm looking at, is definitely special teams. That's what I'm going to be intrigued to see, because that is a team, that is a part of the team that they have completely neglected year in and year out. They've not gotten any type of specialist who can really help, who can really stand out. And I think that punt return or kick return is something that they need to look at eventually.
So when it comes to kick return, with the new rule, they're either it's going to go through the end zone or they're going to fair catch it and it'll come out to the 25.
Well, you'd have the same guy doing punts and kicks, is what I'm saying. You don't need a specialist to do kicks, because Boston Scott is not a punt returner, but he was okay with kick returns. But that's even becoming less valuable by the year to have Boston Scott do that.
They're not going to worry about the kickoff return. Punt return, they just want somebody back there that can catch the football and doesn't turn it over, doesn't bobble it, doesn't fumble it. Because, like I said, if you fair catch the ball wherever, from the goal line to the 25, it comes out to the 25. They have no issues with going 75 yards. With this offense, they can do that. This offense should still be explosive. You have your receivers coming back. You have your tight end back, your quarterback. He's back after getting that big contract, which I don't think we talked about as well, so we'll definitely talk about that. They have a new, Gainwell and Scott are back, but then Penny and Swift. And I think while there's a lot of talk of Gainwell having the most touches in camp, and it seems like he is the RB1, I think what they're doing, they're saving Swift and Penny. They want them to get healthy for week 1 for the New England game. And when, they go out there for week 1, while Gainwell could be the first running back out there, it would not shock me in the least bit if Gainwell, Swift, and Penny have a similar amount of snaps, similar amount of touches. Because let's be real, this offense goes through Jalen Hurts and the wide receivers. This is a passing offense now. Coming into last year, we thought it was going to be more of a running offense, and while they ran the ball, they were second in the NFL, I think, in rushing. They still threw the ball a lot, like 1,000 yards for both Smith and Brown. And Goddard thinks he can be the third with 1,000 yards this year, which would be crazy for this offense. But while we always talk about, this is Philadelphia, we want a hard-hitting defense, we want to run the football, it's a passing team. And Jalen Hurts is the league lead dog when it comes to running the football. He's not going to lead the team in rushing, no, but what he does from the quarterback position dictates how defenses play the Eagles. And there were a bunch of holes for Miles Sanders last year because of Jalen Hurts. We saw for the 2 games that he was out, the game in Dallas and the game against the Saints, the running holes weren't necessarily there because who's going to think that Gardner Minshew is going to run the ball? That's where a Marcus Mariota, who, by the way, at the open practice, he was awful. Like, he couldn't complete a pass, but he ran all over the first-team defense. Has me a little bit worried, but he was running all over the first-team defense of the Eagles. Like, he has the similar skill set that Jalen Hurts has, where you have to respect him running the football, and that'll open things up for the running backs.
Yeah, I mean, and I've heard other things that are concerning in regards to Mariota. The second team offensive line apparently has not looked very good throughout most of training camp, which is kind of worrisome when you think about it, because we are notorious for having the best offensive line, but at the same time seeing at least 1 or 2 guys go down throughout the season and needing that flexibility.
We have to remember the second team offense is going against the first team defense. And the first team Eagles defensive line is no joke. So,
no.
And so when we hear that the second team offensive line is struggling, it's Steen, who's a rookie, Driscoll, who we think has potential, Sill, who just came back after his acquittal. they're struggling because they're going up against Davis, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, Fletcher. Like, they're going up against the ones for the Eagles defense. So it depends on how badly they're struggling, I guess. But I'm not shocked that the young backups are struggling against the first team Eagles defense.
Definitely, the points taken, and I mean, they've at least the reporters make it sound bad. Like, there's been some plays by Davis and some plays by Carter where they were like untouched, and I'm like, you can't go untouched. Shoulder him, like, do something. They're like, those are the types of reports that worry me. But I mean, it's not like Jeff Stoutland to be like this. I think things will get better as the season goes on. Once you got your core in place, your practice squad, your actual game day guys, you're able to focus more on them. Because right now I'm looking at a depth chart of like, I think 14 offensive linemen, 17. So 17 offensive linemen you're working with right now. So it's very difficult, and you're testing people out at different positions. Steen, who got moved, who's a right guard or an interior offensive lineman, was playing left tackle at times. So they're really testing who's got the versatility to move around and be on this roster as, that guy that you can plug them into like 2, 3, 4 of the spots along the offensive line and not worry about them if there's an injury. So I do get it. It's not something to overreact to, because obviously they're using these guys in different positions than they generally would be, and they are going up against the ones who are very good. So, and you're 100% right. Like, to me, I can't even see a world where you keep 4 running backs without that 4th running back being important to punt returns or kick returns. So, like, whatever Trey Sermon is doing that is making him stand out, it better be really good, because you're probably holding a 4th running back, and that 4th running back is going to do very little. So there has to be something that he's going to need to be able to step up when you need to call his number. Because to me, it makes no sense when you have Jalen Hurts taking, like a third of the carries in a game, and then the other 66% is split amongst 4 running backs. I find it hard to believe, without being able to return punts, that a 4th running back makes sense for this team.
Well, they kept Miles, Gainwell.
They kept 4 last year.
Yeah, but down the stretch, Scott didn't really until like the end of the year didn't really. So they could still keep 4 on the roster, but primarily, give the ball to 3 come game day. It'll be Swift, it'll be Penny, and it'll be Gainwell that get the primary carries, unless it's a blowout and then you throw out Scott out there, or it's the Giants because it's the only team that he can play against. But again, we all know how I feel about Scott. I'm not a big Boston Scott fan. I don't know why he's making the most money in that running back room too, which is ridiculous, which is crazy.
They can save $1 million, and somebody commented on my post and said, "What's $1 million to this team?" $1 million was Suopeta, or not Suopeta. It was $1 million was one of the 2 defensive linemen last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what it means. $1 million actually means quite a bit to this team, because it's that move that you make late in the season if you're contending to get that extra veteran piece in play, because they just want to come back and win championships. So that's it could be one of those types of moves. $1 million means a lot in the salary cap league. And even when you have 14 million, the reason how he's so smart with it, because he rolls money over. He doesn't always spend all his money. So what's $1 million? It's $15 million of cap space instead of $14 million. And that, if he doesn't need to use any of it, well, guess what? That all rolls over to next year. And when Jalen Hurts' money starts to kick in, you're going to want this extra bit of money in your back pocket to make those types of moves that have made Howie so savvy and so smart and kept such a good team together.
Yeah. But, let's quickly touch base on the new coordinators. Brian Johnson was the quarterback coach the last 2 years. Shane Steichen moves to the Indianapolis Colts. We know the relationship that Brian Johnson and Jalen Hurts have ever since Jalen was a little kid. Are you worried at all about the transition from Steichen to Johnson? We know that it's Nick Sirianni's offense. We know that that a bunch of people have input into the game plan, but when it comes down to it, it's Nick Sirianni deciding, this is what we're going to do this week. And then it's Brian Johnson calling the plays. But are you worried about the different voice that's going to Jalen Hurts, the transition from Steichen to Brian Johnson? And week one against the Patriots, the first quarter, the Eagles might go 3 and out twice, and there's going to be fans already talking. And we all know how patient the Philadelphia fan base is and how cool and calm they are. But are you worried about that transition?
I'm not really worried about it. Like, I think we talked about it a lot. Like, when Steichen was gone, I think we had some episodes around then, and we talked about this. And I'm not really worried about it because I think Brian Johnson had more input and say into that offense last year than we know, and then we're gonna know. And I mean, you see some of the reports. Like, there's a report out there saying Brian Johnson plans to become a head coach very quickly. So this guy's smart. This guy's a really smart guy. He's moved up through the ranks very quickly through college ball up into the NFL. He's not gonna. He knows what helps Jalen Hurts or what makes Jalen Hurts tick, and I think that he's going to do a really good job. I think he's going to do better than Steichen. I think Steichen is going to have a very rough first couple seasons. I don't think Steichen or Gannon are the head coaches that these teams
personnel
think.
that those two teams have isn't very good.
No, I mean,
granted,
there's just so many people who believe that Steichen is going to do so well because he's got another running quarterback, and that just doesn't make sense to me. That's not the way you should look at it. It doesn't necessarily matter completely the style of quarterback that you're leaning into. And then Gannon, well, we all know, we talked about Gannon all the way down the stretch. Gannon was a guy who threw the Super Bowl away, and yet some teams still bought into him. But and then cost us Vic Fangio as well. That's how you know. He cost you the Super Bowl to the point that the other team owed you a pick. Like, that to me is unfathomable. That guy's ego must just be like, I don't know. As far as the transition to Sean Desai, I feel way better. I feel so comfortable making that transition.
Just listening to Sean Desai speak compared to Jonathan Gannon, it's a 180 degree difference. Like, Sean Desai sounds like a coach. Sean Desai thinks like he sounds the part. Jonathan Gannon does not.
No, and some people say it was our media, but no, like, you watch him even in Arizona, he can't work a mic. He cannot stand in front of a mic and do much.
Because we saw Sirianni's opening press conference. So
and now look. But I mean, but we know Gannon through, like, you knew that Sirianni was a weird guy kind of coming up. Like, you knew if you saw videos, if you saw him in the past, like, this is him. He has this type of personality, that personality that the Philadelphia Eagles love to go for in a head coach. When you have all these names on paper and they go way out of left field, like, he has that type of personality that they love. Jonathan Gannon, he doesn't really have a personality. Like, I sit there and I'm like, you're going into this job, and I don't think he's going to see the day where the Cardinals are good, because for the next 2 to 3 years, the Cardinals are not going to be good.
No, and they're not going to have their starting quarterback until
for at least 6 weeks, definitely 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we might see him because we faced them week 17. We could see Kyler Murray, and I wish that game was earlier in the season, because Gannon could be fired by then. But
to the same point, at that point, they're not even going to be trying, because they're just going to be trying to get that 101.
They have the potential to get the first and second overall pick, which could be Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Which is crazy to think. Crazy
next year's draft, but that's a discussion to have at a different time. All right, so let's talk about some of the guys that you're looking forward to seeing for the Eagles in the first preseason game. We don't expect to see many of the starters, if any of the starters at all, which doesn't surprise me. We've seen how Sirianni has handled preseason games the last 2 years, and they get more out of the practices that they're, the joint practices that they're going to have next week against Cleveland and the week after against Indianapolis than they do in these preseason games. The goal for the Eagles is obviously to make it to the September 10th in New England at 4:25 healthy with all 22 starters who we think are going to be starters. So no Jalen Hurts, no Brown, no Smith. I don't think we'll see Swift or Penny. Maybe not even Gainwell. I don't know. Maybe a series for each of them. Who knows? Don't expect to see any of the offensive line. Maybe Juergens at right guard just to give him some game experience because that's kind of a new position for him. No Goddard, obviously. So it's going to be the Marcus Mariota show for at least a quarter, I think, just to get him some game time before we go to Tanner McKee.
And then the Tanner McKee and Ian Book show. Oof.
And then on the defensive side of the football, any of the starters, no. But, potentially seeing Jalen Carter for a series, Nolan Smith for a series, Kaylee Ringo, Eli Ricks, Mekhi Gardner in the secondary. Definitely probably see Edmonds and Kevon Wallace. Maybe Blankenship for a series. Who knows? I don't think we'll see Nakobe Dean tomorrow.
Unlikely because he's banged up too. So,
he returned. He was a full go at practice the last couple of days and went right in there as the number one middle linebacker. Maybe Jack and Cunningham. Maybe. I don't know.
I think you have to have some of those guys. You look at your linebacking core. You have Hassan Reddick, you have Nolan Smith, you have Nakobe Dean, who are your obviously your locks, and those guys play outside linebacker roles because it's more of a 3-4 focused defense this season. So you think about that, you have to have Morrow out there, you have to have Cunningham out there, Jack, obviously Christian Ellis, even though Christian Ellis seems locked in because he's really good on special teams and he's been having apparently a really good camp. But you got to see some of those guys out there because, you got to fill out your linebackers. You got 3 locks, and then you got to figure it from there.
Yeah, you're right. And like I said, you can't sit everybody because if you sit everybody, then who the heck's going to play? Granted, these preseason games are pretty pointless.
And let's think Cunningham and Jack they weren't really getting tries. They weren't getting nothing. Then they showed up and got signed. They got to go out there and play. Miles Jack's been really bad the last couple seasons. So, he's got to be given an opportunity and he's got to play and prove he can make it. Zach Cunningham, he's a veteran. He was a tackling machine for a few years. But now he's just an aged vet. Is he worth keeping on your roster? Those are the types of questions you have to answer because obviously there's not a world where I see Morrow, Cunningham, Jack, and Ellis all being on the game day roster. So something's got to give amongst it's probably 2 of those guys I don't see making it. So I think at the end of the day, that there's going to be some interesting decisions that have to be made at linebacker and at the DB depth because, like you said earlier in the episode, there's a ton. You got Greedy Williams, you got Josh Jobe, you got Eli Ricks, Mario Goodrich, Keely Ringo, Zach McPherson. You got a lot of names that you have to decide where do they fit.
I'm definitely interested. Now, obviously, the Ravens have won 23 straight preseason games. They're more inclined to play their starters a tad bit longer. I don't know if they're going to play tomorrow. I doubt we'll see Lamar Jackson.
If you care that much about that streak, that's ridiculous. They
care. I don't think we'll see OBJ. You'll see Zay Flowers, I think. I don't think you'll see Bateman.
I doubt it.
But I am intrigued by the young guys and just seeing them going up against other receivers. Now they have the Eagles have that luxury where they're going up against AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, 2 of the best receivers in football. So that's it's iron sharpening iron, as they say. And I want to see them out there in a game situation. I want to see the communication from the sideline, from Desai to whoever's playing middle linebacker and calling the defense. Get all the issues out of the way now, so that when you get to 425 on September 10th in New England, there's not any of those issues. Because if you have those issues, as bad as Mac Jones has played, they'll exploit those issues. Bill Belichick will exploit.
It feels like that game because it feels like not even similar to the Detroit Lions game last season, but feels like the game because they're celebrating Tom Brady. He's going to be in the house. It's going to be wild. It just feels like one of those games where you're going to start the season off with an L that you don't expect to take. I don't want to wish anything upon us or wish bad things, but it has the makings of that. We know how bad we are week one. We go out week one. We usually look at Detroit of last season. But at the time, everyone thought Detroit wouldn't be that good, and they ended up being actually a lot better of a team than everyone thought.
I think they're going to be overrated this year, but we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think the Patriots are the worst team in the AFC East. So, I mean,
I think they finish ahead of the Jets.
Oof, boys.
I think the Jets are going to be overrated this year.
But other guys you want to talk about, I'm actually interested in the wide receiver room.
Yeah, well,
this was the same team that kept pretty much exclusively 4 wide receivers last season, and then Britton Covey.
We know Smith, Brown, I'm assuming Watkins and Zacchaeus are safe.
I don't even know if Zacchaeus is safe, because I think that the battle there was between Watkins and Zacchaeus, and it feels like Watkins is starting to run away with it.
He's going to take the Zach Pascal role. And they kept Zach Pascal.
He's not as big. I don't know if he's if he's got the blocking ability.
I know. And then Nada is that how you say his name? Nada has
that's who I'm most intrigued to watch, because that's who I think can take the Zach Pascal role. And he's done a really good job in camp, making some really good plays, making some big plays. I think until otherwise proven, Britton Covey is in the picture. He's a lock. So my issue there is
you got Graham. You re-sign him to the practice squad and bring him up. I don't think he's a lock to make the initial 53. I think because nobody's going to pick him up again. Because remember last year you were all on the Britton Covey train, and I said, dude, nobody cares about him. Cut him, practice squad. Bring him
just
up.
a way you can take a hit. If somebody else is an opening for punt return and you let this guy free, somebody would probably take that shot if they got the available space, but. We just don't even have the available space, because then you got Devin Allen, who's probably going to end up on the practice squad again. Deion Kane, probably practice squad again. I think the battle becomes between Zacchaeus, Ward, Covey, Nada.
I don't think Ward makes the 50.
I don't think he does either. I really don't. They're trying him at punt return, but I don't so people talk about the special teams, but they don't really give you detail when they're talking about it on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, wherever people are reporting on it, you don't hear a whole lot about who's doing what, besides the fact that we have 2 really bad punters going head to head. Apparently, it sounds like it's pretty ugly. But beyond that, you don't know. They say these people all took punt returns, but you don't know anything.
At the open practice, all the punts were terrible. They were all low line drive punts. Every single one in the special teams period was terrible.
We know Sipas is not that good, and then Zentner was supposed to be better than this, but it's a punter. You hope you don't have to use him a lot, but when you use him, you want to be able to trust him, which we could not trust Sipas last year.
The bad punt in the Super Bowl kind of cost us.
I know.
That was one.
So you need to trust that this guy can go for his 1 or 2 punts a game and just bomb it down the field and not line drive it. But yeah, I don't want to talk about punt or whatever the decision they make. I trust their decision there. But when I look at wide receiver, I don't see how this team keeps more than 5. I see it's got to be 5. And like you said, maybe they do that trick with Covey where they keep him protected there for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then when you have to sign him, you make that decision. But then at that point, you're sitting there with 6 wide receivers on your roster. And what do you do then? But I think the way Nada's played, I don't think they're going to be able to let him go. I think he would get signed somewheres, like a big body receiver who can be your wide receiver 5 or 6 and make a play when you need him or whatever. I think he'd get a job.
The thing that helps the Eagles out, and I guess every other team, is it's not that every week you cut down. It goes from 90 to 53 in one shot. And then you have to put your practice squad together. And a lot of the times it's, while you have scouts that look at other teams and look at other players, it's we have a bunch of guys on our team that we just cut that we want to bring back. So if the Eagles think that they can, push somebody through, hide them through to get them to practice squad, they'll attempt it. But like you said, depending on how much quality of a preseason they have, all this stuff about them being good in camp could be all talk. It would just be ESP putting this stuff out there. But when you see it in game, when you see it on film, even if it's preseason and you see, okay, this guy might have talent, you see what he's doing. Tank Dell yesterday had a decent game. Granted, that touchdown catch he should have caught first. The bobble didn't impress me because he should have caught it first. But
and I mean, and one of my things that when they talk about Tank Dell, he caught the pass against a guy who was almost Mr. Irrelevant. So you got to be careful. It was a 7th-round cornerback he was playing against. But the Texans fans are excited. They have something new, shiny, something that looks good. But he's like, what? He's like 5'8" and 165 pounds. The guy's like Britton Covey size. The guy could end up getting he runs way better routes than Covey. That's the difference. So he's got the technical ability, but the guy is going to have a hard time if a corner decides they want to put hands on you early in the route.
And I'm not going to compare Tank Dell to Smith. A lot of people thought the same thing about Devontae. And Devontae, you can't touch Devontae at the line of scrimmage.
But I would never. Dell is not like, he's a good route runner, but there is no way I'm putting him anywhere near a conversation with Devontae Smith because his route running is top 10 in the league. Devontae Smith, like top 10. It is amazing what this man can do to create separation and keep hands off him at the line of scrimmage. And he's got some more height. Like what? But Devontae's like 5'11", 5'10". Like he's got a bit of height to him. So
I don't know. And again, I wasn't comparing the two, but people were saying when Devontae came in the league that he wasn't going to be able to get off the line of scrimmage. He wasn't going to be able to do this. And you can't touch him at the line of scrimmage. So.
And what do you think, like, from a tight end perspective? Like, I think everyone but Dallas Goedert plays because I think tight end 2 and 3 is a wide open crap.
Goedert's the clear cut number 1. It wouldn't shock me if they're going to keep 3, I think. So it'll be Goedert, Calcaterra, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's like Dan Arnold, who's the third one.
I don't know if it'll be Calcaterra, but I think they keep Stoll again. I don't know. There's something they seem to like him. He seems to be able to do what they ask of him enough to keep him around. He just can't catch a ball. He's not a good receiver. So he's useless if you're using him as a receiver, which means your next keep would be Calcaterra, Arnold, or Jackson, because then you got to make the decision on a pass catcher.
Jackson is intriguing, but he can't stay healthy. And he's not a good blocker.
He's a horrible blocker.
They do need a blocking tight end. Now, Goedert can do it all. Goedert can block. Goedert can obviously catch. Stoll's probably a blocker. So I think that maybe if the third one could be Jackson, and the third one's your receiving kind of tight end.
We saw like Jackson has flashed, but like you said, as soon as the guy gets hit, it feels like he's
breaking
season-ending injury or a minimum couple months injury, and like so he's got to be able to stay healthy. You don't have to be a good blocker, but you have to be able, like, if you have to throw a shoulder block, be able to make your connection. Like, this is a guy who can't even make a basic, like, chip block type play, which is what worries me. But he's a guy that, like, I wanted to see what he could do last year. He got hurt in the preseason. I want to see what he can do this year. But if he gets banged up again in the preseason, I mean, you're going to keep him on the IL because it makes sense to keep him and you're not wasting a roster spot. But to me, if he gets banged up again, I think he's just one of those guys that you just might not be able to ever trust to be able to be healthy, and he may not be worth a spot on your roster or wasting any time with. So,
yeah. And again, like this team, Peter King, I think, said it last week whenever he was at the Eagles camp, that Howie has built the most talented roster in the NFL. Like, they have so much depth all over the place. You know,
when we cut guys, I think there will be at least minimum 5 guys get signed elsewhere when we have to cut them. Guys we may want back that end up taking on to someone's active roster.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. And the worst part about that is, like, somebody that you wanted to bring back, like that position, there'll be an injury like going into the first week that you can't, unless they're on the practice squad somewhere. You're not going to be able to bring them back. But yeah, it's going to be intriguing. It's going to be interesting what the coaching staff, what the front office does when it comes to cut down day. And obviously we're 3 weeks away from that. With the first preseason game being tomorrow against Baltimore. Do you think the Eagles can break that Ravens streak?
I mean, I don't think so, because I don't think we care enough to play people that are going to be able to make us win, unless these like second, third, and fourth stringers we have end up being way better than what some reports have come out of camp. I mean, offensively, I'd be more comfortable saying the offense can score enough than the defense being able to stop enough.
I'm still worried about
'Cause
Mariota completing passes to the right players.
and then you look, and Tanner McKee apparently is at a pretty good camp. It sounds like he's going to be the third one, and Book will be on the way out. It's tough to say,
Okay,
but
well, I
like,
hate
I
Ian
mean,
Book stinks too.
Ian Book was, like defensively. I mean, we talked about some offensive players, but is there like some defensive players you have your eyes on? I mean, I have my eyes on some linebackers. Like I just said, I there's no way I see them keeping more than 5 or 6 linebackers, and the core three guys that are going to be there. But I'm more interested, just like you, in the DBs. Like the DBs are going to be so interesting because you're going to have to make, like, that's why I think they're gonna try and get 2 guys to the practice squad, and they're not going to make it. Like a couple of these DBs are going to stand out, and they're going to try and get them to the practice squad, and they're going to get signed
And
once they're cut.
like the big question will be, will the Eagles go heavy? Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, Ringo. That's 4. I don't think Josiah Scott makes it. Thank God. Job would be 5.
McPherson, they got the high draft
McPherson's
capital in him.
that.
Like he could make it.
Now, which one of those younger players do you think they're gonna have be versatile and play the safety role? Because maybe that's how that they would stay on the roster, to play safety. Because I like Eli Ricks, I like Mekhi Gardner too. Like, you're not gonna be able to bring all these guys back.
I think Josh Job, like last year, they talked about that as a move to safety. So maybe you see him a little bit at safety during the preseason and seeing if they can make it work. Like that can be a versatile guy who's your safety or your cornerback. You never know. Zach McPherson's on the smaller end, so I don't know if he can be that versatile guy for you. Greedy Williams has been like mainly exclusively cornerback, so I don't know if I could see him being the safety. Like Greedy Williams to me is a guy who's going to not make the roster. Like I think like he snuck through, he got on our roster. He's being given an opportunity. I just don't think he'll make it. Mario Goodrich had some good hype last season. Like there's just so many DBs, and like but like you said, it's, can you prove valuable from a versatility standpoint? Because if you can be versatile, like that's going to be the difference. And like, I think they keep Josh Job anyway, but that's going to be the difference in McPherson, Goodrich, Greedy Williams, and Eli Ricks duking it out for a spot on this roster. That's going to be the difference if you can make it by proving your versatility to this defense.
Yep. But yeah, I'm one thing. I'm just mad. I'm very, very excited that football season's back. It's been a long off season. And it was quiet for the Eagles, which is good, which is a good thing. We always talk about, we want some news, but no news is good news in the NFL.
And I find it best when, like with Sirianni, the way they keep camp and the way they conduct camp is what keeps things quiet. Like the biggest thing that's come out of camp is Derek Barnett being a jackass, which is to nobody's surprise because this is the guy who leads the league in penalties when he's out there. So that's to nobody's surprise that he's trying to pick a fight with his own teammates or taking cheap shots at his own teammates in training camp.
Yeah. I don't.
Which that brings up a fun topic. I think Barnett makes the team, but
as a trade chip?
Is he a guy you think is gone by the deadline?
I don't know how he would make the team unless like he does something stupid every game. Now, granted, he's not going to have to play as many snaps, but if he's playing, say, 10 snaps and he does 2 things stupid, like we saw that. Remember, was it 2 years ago? The clip from Sirianni. It's always him. Like, yeah, we need some.
Even one a game. Like when you see him getting like one penalty a game, it's usually a decent size, like a bigger penalty that we end up all.
When you think about our defensive ends, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, I'm including Hassan Reddick and Nolan Smith. While they are outside linebackers, they're really defensive ends. Milton Williams can play inside and outside. Fletcher Cox can pretty much play inside and outside at this point. There might not be room for him, but we'll see. They don't want to give up on a guy. The
contract probably dictates he has to be there, but I mean, there's nothing to say that come the start of the season, if someone gets banged up at edge, that he would be off limits, because he definitely wouldn't be off limits in my book.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to the injuries, and we'll find that out, in 3 weeks or as we go along this preseason. The Eagles were fortunate last year that they didn't have many injuries that affected the season. and they were able to, have 22 of 22 starters in the Super Bowl. I don't expect that to happen this year. So the depth that they've built on, with the roster now, I know it's at 90, and it's going to be tough to keep everybody when you go to 53. I think that that's going to be key for this team because we're expecting them to play into February. So let's hope they stay healthy, obviously. But if they can't, let's hope the backups like Jalen's obviously. Besides Jalen, here's a question before we finish off. Besides Jalen, because obviously he's the big one. Who's the one guy they can't afford to lose?
AJ Brown. I think like that this offense before AJ Brown and after AJ Brown is like night and day. Like we did see a Jalen Hurts offense. Granted, maybe definitely nowhere near the offense we've seen now, but I just think you can't live without AJ Brown. Like I'd debate AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, but I think AJ Brown's most important. He got the big contract for a reason. We've seen that offensive line be able to be interchangeable at times. So I mean, I'd be okay there, but I think AJ Brown. What about you?
Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson is a right tackle and offense should not be that important to a team, but when he played in the playoffs with an abductor injury and dominated, he hasn't given up a sack in 3+ years. Like AJ, I get the importance of AJ Brown, obviously, because the depth behind AJ Brown and Devontae Smith is not very good. I won't lie. Like they don't have the quality of guys there, but behind Lane Johnson, who Driscoll, Steen,
we've seen it. We saw it at the tail end of the season. I mean, I agree. I see it there with you as well. Like we saw Mailata go down and like he was kind of replaceable. We've seen Dickerson go down, Kelsey, like we've seen those other guys go down and they be semi-replaceable, but we've never seen someone be able to take the Lane Johnson role and like you expect to see, a sack or two, but like whenever Lane Johnson goes in, someone steps in, like the whole offensive line is thrown off. But that isn't necessarily the same when we've lost one of the other four guys.
Exactly. And with the core four, we hope that if this is their last run with the Eagles, that they're finishing it off in Vegas.
That's definitely a good question, though. Like a really good poll question. I don't think I'd ever pick any of our defensive players because we've seen so many of them go down and just someone step in.
I think Slay or Bradbury would be big to lose one of them.
Yeah. I mean, but like, I feel like this team has to start more runs through the offense and the capability of putting up as many points as possible and yards as possible. So I don't know. I'd have a hard time like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Lane Johnson, and then maybe I'd start to consider a defensive player, but I don't think I could consider them top three.
Well, the Eagles' strength is going to be the offense this year. They should put up points at will. If the defense can just not give up a score every possession, the Eagles should still potentially win a lot of games. Dude, I'm excited. I can't wait for I'm so glad football is back. I can't wait for the first. It's a preseason game. I don't care. I got the Green Bay Packers and Cincinnati Bengals on TV right now. Like I don't care that it's preseason and we're seeing a bunch of guys that aren't going to be playing in 4 weeks time when we get to September 10th. But football, the best sport in the world, is back. I don't care what anybody says, and I'm hyped.
Oh, I agree.
And I can't wait to see what the Eagles do tomorrow in Baltimore. Like we're not going to sit here and predict the win or predict the loss. It doesn't really matter. It's preseason. We want them to come out healthy. We just want to see them hit somebody. I want to see what some of the young guys can do and get them off the field so that they're not in jeopardy for not being on the field in New England on September 10th.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. Perfectly said. I just want the regular season.
Now we know we took a hiatus, but we're back. The football's back. The Eagles are back. That means the Kelly Green Hour is back. The Eagles play next Thursday night against the Cleveland Browns at Lincoln Financial Field. I'm thinking we'll be on again Tuesday.
Probably Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll figure out what we can make work.
Yeah,
And we'll react to this, and then we'll preview the next, which is more just talking about the guys we want to see more from.
And then when we get to the regular season, we'll go to our customary our pre-game show and then our post-game show.
Tuesday for sure, but we're still. I think we're still up for debate what the pre-game show will look like.
Yeah, so Tuesday will be our post-game, and then we'll once we figure out all the details, we'll be sure to share when we will be on for the second show of the week, which will be the pre-game for the upcoming game. Now, obviously, the Eagles go from a Sunday game to a Thursday, so the first week, and then they go to a Monday. So I think it's Monday in Tampa.
Preseason's bad enough without the tomfoolery that is the schedule, where they have like a Thursday game, a Friday game, a Saturday, a Sunday, a Monday.
So
like, that's just
regular
ridiculous.
Season, it goes Sunday, Thursday, Monday, Sunday.
Yep.
It's our schedule is going to look a little messed up for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, but we'll be back.
Just a bit, and our look will be back as well. This is our first official. The painted lines has retired and become Edge of Philly. Mm-hmm. So we've lost our intro, we've lost our everything, and now we're just back to the dog days of 6 years ago when we started this.
Yeah, right. When we were recording it and then putting it out on wherever you listen to podcasts. But Connor, I'm glad we're back. It was a thrill to talk with you today about get ready for Philadelphia Eagles football. I hope your sons now, give you a little bit of breathing, and I hope you got their Kelly Green ready for week 1.
I'm just happy there's a lot of later games this year because it makes it easier with kids. But it may not always be that way.
A lot of late.
The 2 o'clock games are very hard to do with kids.
I'm pretty sure they only have 3 1 o'clock games this year, which is
exactly. Which I'm good. That's good. They go to bed by 7:30, so I can sit down and watch every other game, or at least catch the second half and then rewatch the first half. There's ways.
All right, thank you everybody for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10, and follow me on Twitter at LJ Harrell54, and follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Edge of Philly Sports or EOP Sports. You'll be able to find all the content for Edge of Philly Sports for all the sports, the big 4, especially the Philadelphia Eagles. So for Connor, I'm LJ. We're back. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.